I wouldn't actually propose a break. So we can start with the session 2, which is about to reflect on the 2014-2020 EU programming period and give us some hints and recommendations from the new for the new programming period. Therefore, the current one. So we have 2 Interreg representatives. One is remote and the other one is here. And then we have European Commission, European Education and Culture Executive Agency, and European Investment Bank Institute. So first of all, I give the floor to Ms. Anna Sirocco, who is joining online. Communication and Project Manager from the Interreg Central Europe Program Joint Secretariat. Anna, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everyone, from my side. So really sorry I could not be there. It was not possible for me to travel this time. But thank you very much for inviting me to your final event. I'm guessing that my slides should be shared from your end.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me? And
yes. Just a little patience.
No problem.
Anna, they're telling me that you should share your own slides. Okay. Anna, you're getting really magical.
Yes, I see it myself too. I don't know why. Let's see if I share the
Try
screen,
to.
if it gets
Please
better.
do. I saw them before. They are very useful. Trust me. There is no lack of trust, Koen. Okay, we have it.
Can you see this? Oh, yes.
Sure.
Good. So just very briefly, since you're already running a bit late, I will just give you a brief overview on the new Interreg Central Europe program, but we'll also be briefly looking back to what has been done in the previous program regarding to, in general, all our priorities and specifically on culture. So as you can see from this infographic, so the Interreg Central Europe program from 2014 to 2020 was able to fund and support in total 138 projects who could cooperate on various topics, and specifically under 4 priorities. We had innovation, low carbon, environment and culture, and transport. And with a budget of 231 million, we were able to bring together to cooperate more than 1,400 partners from all over Central Europe. And specifically for culture, as you know, we used to have a priority and a specific objective specifically dedicated to culture to improve the capacities of management and maintenance of the common Central European cultural heritage. This is a topic that has always raised high interest in our program, and in fact, as you can see, we funded over the past 7 years 24 projects in this field. 9 had a specific focus on heritage management of cultural heritage sites, like the ForHeritage project. But then we were also addressing other various topics such as cultural roots and crafts, tradition, intangible cultural heritage, and the whole world of CCI, so cultural and creative industries, both for the aspects of entrepreneurship, but also policy. And in this project, we could really see the partners were really eager and active, and were able to develop and roll out to their region some new, interesting and useful approaches that could really help preserve our cultural heritage in Central Europe. But moving on from the past to the present and the future, the new Interreg Central Europe program 21-27 was just recently launched. It will run again for 7 years with a budget of 224 million euros from the European Regional Development Fund. And the geography hasn't changed much. We have still the same 9 EU member states participating that you can see in the map. We just have one new region from Germany, but overall all the other members, previous regions are still here with us, still cooperating in 4 new priorities that we will see now in the next slide. We have our monitoring committee, the working group working on the preparation of the new program, identified these 4 priorities as the main priorities for the Central European areas. So we will be working, supporting cooperation for a smarter, greener, better connected, and more integrated Central Europe, which means we still have addressed topics under innovation and for a greener and more sustainable transport and topics related to governance. And even though you might see that we do not have a specific objective addressing specifically culture anymore, this does not mean that culture is not there. It's not relevant for us anymore. It's quite the contrary. It's more in this new period, culture is going to be more of a horizontal issues. So we have references to culture in, for example, in the specific objective 1.1, under strengthening innovation capacities. We also have reference to cross-sectoral cooperation, including the CCI sector and sustainable tourism. Under 1.2, strengthening skills for smart specialization and entrepreneurship. We also invite to address cultural and creative industries again. And moving to priority 2, under 2.1, and where we want to support the energy transition of Central Europe, we also refer to climate neutral solution for cultural heritage buildings. Or under 2.2, where climate change is in the focus, we also underline the importance of increasing the resilience to climate change of our cultural heritage sites. And finally, also under the new priority for improving governance for cooperation in Central Europe, we also refer to the integration of and the preparation of integrated territorial development strategies, addressing also the shared historical and cultural heritage of our program area. So as you can see, we might not have specific objectives naming culture, but there are still many interesting angles to address this topic, and because during the programming period they were deemed still very important and relevant for ensuring a sound and sustainable development of the program area as a whole. So in terms of opportunities now, well, past and upcoming, in terms of funding, of course, well, the first call, as you might know, has recently closed. The assessment is currently ongoing, and we will allocate around 72 million euros of the program budget. The funding decision is expected for December 2022, so there will be, towards the end of the year, there will be some news on the new projects that we will be funding in this period. And in all program priorities, as the first call didn't have a specific thematic focus. However, in case you missed this opportunity, we are also already preparing the second call. It will be a special call. We will be funding pioneer projects and the budget available will be for this call around 10 million euros. And we can foresee that it will have some thematic focus, also taking into account the results of the first call for proposals, which is why more information will also come later on in the year once we have more information about the results of the first call, of course. About this, I really strongly invite you, in case you're interested in our funding, in following not only our website, but also our social media channels, where we regularly share all the relevant updates about our funding and also, of course, our projects, so that you can stay up to date with the latest developments of cooperation in Central Europe. And with this, I would give the word back to Brussels.
Thank you very much, Anna. It was definitely interesting. So we have to keep in mind that we have to be creative in terms of adapting the topic of heritage through innovation, connectedness, green heritage, which are really the topics which play an important role in the heritage sector. It just leads us to new questions which can be discussed later, maybe new professions in the heritage sector. Now we have Magda Michalikova, a thematic expert from the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. We heard a lot about good practices and how they can inspire us, how they can be replicable, transferable. So Magda, please share your thoughts about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this interesting event. Thank you as well to all the speakers from the first session and for sharing your interesting projects and outcomes. I'm here representing Interreg Europe. I am a thematic expert at the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and I will have a presentation also in a bit. Maybe.
Lights on Magda. Problem with the PDF?
You can use the, yeah.
Let's be patient just for a minute or so. So we didn't have a break, so you can use it now.
1 second.
Okay, great. So it's coming in, they say 1 second, which already passed. Okay, here we go.
Perfect, thank you very much. So I will start, well, I will start again. Interreg Europe has launched a new period. We're in the new period at the moment with a program budget of 379 million euros. We have changed a little bit. We have now 6 topics that we focus on: smart, green, connected, social, citizens, and governance. So quite similar to what was mentioned in the previous presentation, we have a concentration principle of 80% towards the smart and green topics. And regarding culture, as was mentioned before, we see it as a horizontal topic spanning across all of these 6 topics. We have 29 countries, so all the EU countries plus Norway and Switzerland. We have lost the UK, unfortunately. We are now in the first call, which ends at the end of this month. So there is still time to apply. We have a allocated budget of 130 million euros, and the call is open to all topics. And the decision will be taken at the end of 2022. You can reach program assistance in many different ways. There is a specific form on our website where you can get feedback on your project idea. You can also get guidance on project developments through various resources. There is Q&A with the Joint Secretariat on the 20th of May. So if you wish to apply for a project in this call, I encourage you to participate in this event. And you can also reach out by phone or get answers by email, of course. Interreg Europe has basically 2 main sectors. So we focus on projects, which, we've also seen the MOMAR project, and which I've talked about in these previous couple of slides. And we also have Policy Learning Platform, which is focusing on the capitalization of the ongoing projects, but also projects that are already closed. And I will talk about that a little bit now. So in a nutshell, the platform provides a continuous policy learning opportunities through access to knowledge, people, and expert support. We have a lot of culture heritage projects, and I've mentioned some of them here. The topics really range from cultural roots to fortress cities, to cultural heritage of fishing communities, cultural heritage of mountain regions or rural areas. So you mention it, we probably have it. When it comes to access to knowledge, we have a really great platform of resources. We have a lot of good practices, as also mentioned previously, again, in cultural heritage, but also other topics, of course, a lot of areas from a lot of different parts of Europe. We also have policy briefs. These are going a little bit more in depth on specific topics, for example, digital solutions in the field of cultural heritage, or citizen engagement in the protection of cultural heritage, and many more. We also produce so-called stories, where we go more in depth on selected policy changes or good practices, and interview the good practice owners, so to speak, and really try to provide inspiration to our community. And there is always opportunity to reach out to these people. And we organize a lot of events on cultural heritage. For example, some of the past events were on cultural heritage in mountain regions, or webinar on workshop on sustainable and competitive tourism, and other events. When it comes to access to people, we have a really large community of over 25,000 practitioners. So there is a great opportunity to connect, to really use this platform as a social platform, and to network, to reach out to people from projects who you find inspiring, or maybe working on similar topics, and network with them, and perhaps draft a new project together. We will have a webinar series in October on digitalization of heritage and on reviving of cultural roots. So I encourage you to join us in these events. I would also like to talk a little bit about our access to experts. At the Policy Learning platform, we offer expert support services for free to not only people from the Interreg Europe projects, but to all municipalities and regions across Europe. And we offer this support in the form of peer reviews, matchmakings, and policy help desks. The peer reviews are 2-day events where basically you come to us with your policy challenge on different topics, whatever comes to mind, and we search for experts in the community and beyond, and we select together 4 to 5 experts with whom you then collaborate and address this challenge over 2 days. We also have matchmaking sessions, which are based on the same principle but are much shorter, so they are usually 2-hour events. And we have policy help desks where you can reach out to us again with a policy challenge or a question, and we will work with you on kind of a one-on-one basis. We have really encouraging feedback from the community. These services are well regarded and successful. Example of a peer review in the cultural heritage sector, for example, is a peer review we've done at the end of last year for the city of Antwerp in Belgium, where we were looking at their challenge of reviving the network of fortress belts. We had a team of peers from Estonia, Croatia, Germany, Italy, and Czech Republic. And we were looking at how they could set up a sustainable restart of the fortress belts and how to create strong branding and governance structure. So that's just for you to give you an idea of what this policy challenge might be. Yes, I think just to close, I would like to invite you to reach out to us to check the resources on the website, but also to apply for a peer review or come to us with your issues via the policy help desk. We are here for the community, so I think it's a good opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magda. It was really inspiring. We know what we can expect while Magda will slowly leave us. I would like to ask just the remaining 3 speakers to join me here. And as Magda said, please come. As Magda said, the close of the first call is on 31st May, which literally means that you have 19 days. So, okay. Thank you very much again. So we have 3 speakers here. So first of all, here is Maria Chiara Esposito. She's coming from the Cultural Policy Unit from the European Commission, DG for Education, Youth, Sports and Culture. Then Mr. Walter Zampieri and Bruno Rossignol. So Maria Chiara, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the organizers for this invitation. And thanks a lot to the previous speakers in the session of the pilot projects and EU-funded projects. It was particularly interesting for me from the EACEA Cultural Policy Unit to hear about impact and about stories of how projects are running. And it links very well with my presentation. I also wish to thank in particular Regione Piemonte for organizing this event and to say that I'm happy to be here also in my role as a seconded national expert at the Commission, because I come from a regional government. So it's nice to liaise again with partners I know very well. So I will try to give an overview of our policies. Just a quick reminder that is always good to have in mind in terms of the competencies that we have at the Commission on Culture, and that we indeed try to implement, in particular in our unit in EAC. The fact that, as you know, the Commission has a role of support towards member states regarding cultural heritage, in particular for preservation and promotion of European heritage. And of course, the elaboration of policies and programs goes hand in hand with cooperation with member states as well as with stakeholders. So what I will present now are the priorities of the framework in which we act as Commission and in particular as EAC, and also the schemes and the tools that we use in order to involve as much as possible the stakeholders and the community that is for us crucial to inform and to create the input for us to define and to design, co-design our policies. Here a recap of the Council's work plan for culture that identified 6 main priorities, and you can see that sustainability of cultural heritage is the first one, and the sustainability angle is somehow an underlying aspect also, I would say, across the other priorities, because everything that has to do with cohesion and well-being, the ecosystem supporting artists and cultural heritage and cultural and creative professionals, as well as gender equality, international cultural relations, and finally, the additional priority that was included to amend the work plan for culture on the cultural dimension of sustainable development have, in a way, a common aspect in thinking sustainability at the origin of the importance of supporting and promoting cultural heritage in our role. And indeed, all the programs where culture has been more and more mainstreamed, in particular what we call cooperation programs, from Creative Europe to Horizon Europe, Erasmus+, and the RDF, which is under the joint shared management between the Commission and the national and regional authorities, are the framework in which we try to implement not only these priorities from the work plan for culture, but also very much what we call the legacy of the European Year for Cultural Heritage that took place in 2018. And in this big scheme, it's very important to know that we have now to look also at what the Recovery and Resilience Fund offers as opportunity as well for the cultural sector under the plans that will be implemented by the member states. Just a quick recall to the main pillars of action and principles that guide these policies and the mainstreaming of culture across the programs that I mentioned, and indeed liaise with this legacy from the European year, and also with the 4 main areas under which you will see that somehow the goals within the programs are connected. So engagement, sustainability, again, protection and innovation are these 4, let's say, cross-cutting dimensions under which all our initiatives and targeted actions are constructed. For example, you will see that many of the calls under Horizon Europe Cluster 2 have a lot of aspects that have to do on one side with, for example, the sustainability of cultural heritage, and on the other side of innovation as far as science for heritage is concerned. So research, innovation, technology, and for tackling all the challenges have put cultural heritage in danger, but as well also as at the center of a potential innovation that can be more and more driven also by the cooperations between the heritage communities and the one of scientists and researchers. So I will later in some slides focus in particular on some calls and some underlying principles of the new Horizon Europe as compared to the one that you know very well, because some of your projects projects have been funded under Horizon 2020. Also to focus on sustainability in terms of, let's say, an aspect that has been driving our cooperation with stakeholders, as I said. I want to remind that we have an expert group which is composed of members of the heritage large community at pan-European level. So it groups European organizations active in the field, as well as representatives of member states and international organizations such as UNESCO, OECD. So it really comprises the large capacity of exchanging information and exchanging also how heritage practitioners and managers are dealing with sustainability, particularly in the last 2 years after the pandemic that was indeed reminded by many speakers before as the main scenario in which now we have to design and to implement our policies. And linked to the work of this expert group, I wanted to stress that we had a very important session that took place last year and connects very well with some of the projects that you have been mentioning on the issue of funding, of alternative funding, complementary funding from private sector, in addition to the sources that come from EU or national and regional programs, so private-public partnerships. And we discuss all these types of alternative or mixed funding as also a way to address an important recommendation that came from the Court of Auditors earlier report, in which all institutions at different levels were asked to really reflect on how the weakness in funding and incapacity to cooperate with the private sector and to attract investment for the profitable potential of heritage for its value to the community, but also for its value to investors, was discussed and had an outcome under the final result of the workshop that has been published on our website. So you can find this paper online, which is still very, very actual and very, very linked to modalities and pilot cases for reuse, for example, of cultural heritage, or for crowdfunding, and many, many possibilities of cooperation between private and public, as well as linking to what was discussed previously regarding the Cultural Heritage in Action project, capacity building examples regarding these peer learning initiatives. So also when it comes to governance and funding of heritage, both through this Cultural Heritage in Action project that is particularly relevant for us as a source of information and best practices, and from discussions such as the one I mentioned on the alternative funding under the expert group, we are, let's say, learning a lot of lessons, and we are also informing our new policies based on this, in particular on issues that are becoming now very central, like, for example, under the implementation of the recovery and resilience measures, and to monitor what will be the consequence of, for example, important publications like the one that was mentioned from the ECOMOS study on European quality principles. So it's really entering a phase where these lessons learned are also mainstreamed in interventions with other DGs. For example, we are discussing with DG Regio how under the ERDF and the operational plans, the quality principles for heritage interventions will be uptaken and will be introduced possibly among potential criteria that should inspire, as many of you already stressed, the practitioners and the managers of the national and regional authorities to design the grants, to program the calls, and to put the quality principles as drivers of interventions for improving the implementation and the use of funds. So it's really, I would say, a multi-governance and joint effort between DGs and between institutions. I will not go more into details of this project because it's been presented. Just to mention that there is a second phase now, and there will be peer learning visits under these 3 new thematic areas taking place until the end of this year. Another very important aspect linked to the legacy of the European year and the pillar of education and the role of cultural heritage for skills and for improving the capacity of managers and heritage professionals to cooperate between culture and creative sectors. We have 2 very important projects that have been funded, one under the FLIP project that is connected to our direct actions and Creative Europe program, and the second one under Erasmus+. This second one is particularly important because it's a long-term project. It's a consortium of more than 25 partners. It's called Charter, and it will design a mapping and a strategy for investing in new skills and for also creating new curricula for, let's say, having a better understanding and recognition of qualifications across the European Union, and for future learning modules, indeed developed through cooperation between labs, research centers, higher education institutions, as well as ministries of culture and pan-European organizations that are representing the entrepreneur, let's say, of the cultural heritage sector. So it's really a strategic project on which we have a lot of hopes, and it will last 4 years. So it's really in the current phase of developing its core activities, and it has a large platform also of social media and communication tools. So it's an open project where indeed the consortium is trying to liaise as much as possible also with existing already EU-funded projects, in particular in the field of research, because it's somehow at the crossroad between research and education. So I think it can be very useful for you to liaise with these partners and to have a look at the activities of this consortium. I have just included this reference to remind the importance of the EU Green Deal principles and priorities, of course, to guide the action, in particular on the policies that we try to leverage in terms of climate change, resilience, and sustainability, the sustainable development dimension driven by culture and cultural heritage. And linked to this, we have 2 OMC groups, this open method of coordination forms that represent essentially working groups where experts of member states focus on the priorities. And in this case, these 2 main priorities linked to the Green Deal are the integration of cultural policies in sustainable development strategies at national level. And this is a first OMC group that will develop its report until September. And the second one is strengthening cultural heritage resilience for climate change. This is really very relevant and has gained a lot of momentum and interest also in the international community of cultural heritage, big players linked to the discussion on green and environmental challenges, and also during the COP26. So really, climate change is becoming a key topic for our policies. And this is very evident also from the results of another slightly earlier OMC group, focused on high quality architecture and built environment, which developed an analysis and a number of interesting good practices to focus on the social function of architecture, on the role of architecture to be combining built environment and the use of a number of disciplines, including hard sciences like materials, engineering, and all those disciplines that can leverage the potential of quality architecture, but also to look at the common good in terms of architectural approaches that can drive cultural heritage investments to improve the quality of the built environment. And this relates very much to some developments that we will now see in Horizon Europe, particularly related to the NEB, to the new European Bauhaus. To close on the green transition and the dimension of quality of investments in terms of resilience and digital transition as well, here a recap of the main investments that we have analyzed under the Recovery and Resilience Facility, where you can see that indeed there is a budget of more than 10 billion euros for cultural measures under the overall envelope of the RRF for CCIs, which is a bit more than 2%, which was the percentage required and advocated from the European Parliament and from the civil society. So as you can see in the little scheme, the different measures tackle very much issues of energy efficiency and resilience and sustainability of built environment and cultural heritage sites, as well as skills, as well as management through addressing the digital transformation needs as well. So to finally stress how all these initiatives are becoming very central to the new lines of investment in Horizon Europe. I have given you an overview here of Cluster 2 main challenges. Cluster 2 is the pillar in Horizon Europe that addresses culture, creativity, and inclusive society. And within this big intervention area, there is a chapter particularly dedicated to cultural heritage and cultural creative industries, which is called Destination 2. It has already launched a number of calls. We are now on the second year of the first work program. And these are the topics that are going to facilitate the cooperation between researchers and cultural heritage professionals to tackle all the challenges that we have discussed, linked to climate change, to disasters, to trafficking, illicit trafficking of cultural heritage goods, as well as quality of interventions for digitization on one side and for curation of digital assets on the other side. And a very strong emphasis is also on CCIs as regards competitiveness and innovation to invest on the capacity of culture and creative industries to develop more technology-oriented research, but also to deploy all the social potential that is linked to innovation driven by CCIs. So cooperation between CCIs and cultural heritage is absolutely crucial to Cluster 2 and to this autonomous intervention area of cultural heritage. And as you can see, when we say cultural heritage in Horizon Europe, we say more and more both intangible and tangible forms of cultural heritage assets. And as I said, the cooperation with creative industries, but also very much the cooperation with artists and with artistic disciplines. So indeed, multidisciplinarity and participatory approaches where cultural heritage stakeholders, regional authorities, and the civil society are involved from the very beginning of the projects by researchers and through cooperation experiences with the academic sector in all forms of support and promotion of heritage, from protection to conservation to restoration, and all topics related to preservation of artifacts and monuments towards a more green and a more digital-oriented way. So the three main areas that you will see in the calls are green, digital, and innovative. And under these three parts, there is a dedicated aspect for the new European Bauhaus that has already launched a new call for researchers to shape a better and greener way of life in creative and inclusive societies through the particular role of architecture, design, and the arts. And indeed, this call has just been closed, so it will be, let's say, the test bed for the first results and the first applications. It will finance 6 millions of budget with at least 3 projects. It should be discussed now under the submission and the final evaluation. And towards the end of the year, the applicants should be notified what projects have been awarded. And what is important to say is that among the expected outcome of this call, as I said before, the importance of the social function of architecture is there, and the inclusive dimension of NAB, which is one of the 3 main principles, together with the aesthetics and sustainability, will be particularly addressed in order to develop new architectural and design solutions that have heritage and cultural heritage sites and landscapes as their main areas of implementation. And following this call, we are discussing for the new work program an innovation action, again on the same topics, but to implement in near real conditions through pilot projects, experimentations driven from the research findings that were the outcomes of the first call. So there is a strong, let's say, vision and connection between the 2 work programs. And here you can see the main areas under which the NAB initiative is being developed. In the communication of the Commission, you see that there are 4 main thematic areas that are all very pertinent to the project that we have discussed this morning: reconnecting to nature, regaining a sense of belonging, prioritizing the places and people that need it the most, and need for long-term life cycle thinking in the industrial ecosystem. All very pertinent also to interventions where cultural heritage can be prominent for its role in driving and regaining sense of belonging, as well as reconnecting with places and nature, and being also a protagonist of a new industrial ecosystem.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Esposito, for giving us this very comprehensive array of possibilities. And now, Mr. Walter Zampieri, you can offer us.
Yes. Is it working? Yes. Oh, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for this invitation in particular, because in the last 2 years, I think this is only the second such meeting that I've been having. So it's indeed very, very pleasant for me to be with you. It's also very important to talk a little bit about Creative Europe. So probably you already know what Creative Europe is, no? It's the only EU instrument that focuses only on culture only. I mean, there are other things, there are other bigger instruments probably, but we are the only ones for culture. We are the only ones for cooperation between different organizations in different countries. We launched the program last year, of course. This is the new program. There have been no huge changes compared to the previous one, as a matter of fact. We have a little bit more money. We have added some interesting features, but nothing fundamental. So stakeholders were quite happy, actually, including the Parliament and the Council, so which is why we kept the most important structure. The most important structural fact that remains about cultural heritage is that we don't really do infrastructure, as a matter of fact. So if you want to restore a cathedral, you need other instruments. But of course, as we also discuss today, it's not just the objects, no? It's also about the people, fundamentally, no? I was very much involved in the European Year of Cultural Heritage, and one of the main messages is cultural heritage is about people. It's not so much objects, no? It's about the meaning, it's about interpretation, it's about the values, as we just said, about cultural heritage. And of course, it's about the capacity building of the cultural operators who work on cultural heritage. So let's look at what we did with the previous program for Creative Europe. This is just the a glance of everything we did. So it covers also media, all sorts of numbers, no figures about books, figures about professionals, figures about cultural cooperation projects. I'll skip very quickly because this is exactly what I do, which is culture. So these are the projects that we finance for culture. 647 cooperation projects, networks, platforms, literary translations. So overall, more than 1,100 projects. For me, that's not even the most important figure, as a matter of fact. The most important figure is how many organizations have been involved in the program. You need to multiply that by 5 only for the partners in cooperation projects. But then if you add also the networks, for instance, you have Europa Nostra there, but there are also NEMO for the museums. I mean, we are really talking about more 10,000 organizations involved. So this is really a big family. And this is what we call the European cultural space at the end of a day. And of course, cultural heritage has an important role in this. It might be quite difficult to see. So we are talking about cooperation projects, and we're talking about 135, I have the exact figure here, for cultural heritage. But it's actually, this is underestimated, as a matter of fact. There are more than that, because these are really the projects that ticked one of the boxes, being intangible, museums, libraries. There are also other projects. If you look at the database, which is open, and I just did it, if you look for cultural heritage, you have more than 200 projects. And if you just expand a little bit the search, there are even more than that. But still, I mean, it's quite important because 135 means 15% of all the projects that we did. So it remains quite important. The other thing is that, of course, we cover everything, as you can see, all the sectors, every sector. So from music, graphic, sculpture, creative writing, street art, painting. And you can always have actually a dimension of cultural heritage. That's why I was saying it's quite difficult really to quantify exactly how many we have. What are we doing now with the new program? Well, we kept the cooperation projects. There are some small changes, maybe we don't need to discuss, but they're more about the composition of the consortium and, of course, the funding, the co-funding, which is higher. Platforms about emerging artists, the networks, self-explanatory, literary works. Opportunus, it's about mobility. So this is not still not yet with me, with the agency. It's with the commission in EAC, but still that's quite important. It's becoming more important. It's a mobility scheme for cultural professionals and artists. And then also, I put also this pan-European cultural entities, which is about orchestras, because it was put in the legal basis to support these entities that have a huge reach for citizens, really. It's about citizens, primarily young people. But even for here, which is, of course, orchestras, you do have, if you look at the second one, which is by Jordi Savall, as a matter of fact, it is about cultural heritage. It's about intangible heritage. So still, we have a dimension about cultural heritage also in the music projects, which are the most represented, if you want, in the Creative Europe program for several reasons, I mean. But still, I mean, also that one. Then we have the networks. For the networks, as I just mentioned, we finished the selection. Of course, we selected Europa Nostra, but we have also other networks. We have 4 networks for cultural heritage. There's also the museums, NEMO. We have a Future for Religious Heritage, which is quite important because it has been developing over the years, more importantly, more members, and also a little bit, I would say, outside what we could have thought initially. No, I mean, there's also synagogues, Protestants, churches. It's also about the reuse and readaptation of churches that are not been in use for religious purposes. So it's quite interesting. And of course, we also have the industrial heritage part, which remains and clearly a very big part of Europe's history is our industrial history. But let's look at the COP calls because it still remains the most important one. It's the call that we have every year. So it's about between 60, 70 million euros every year. So it's 120, 150 projects that are selected every year. These are the general priorities that you can see. I mean, you have the ones also of the Commission, so European Green Deal, digital, you have inclusion, really the priorities of the von der Leyen Commissioner. But we also have, of course, something that we added, which is the annual sector specific, which is about capacity building. And it's really, really about well, probably we don't need this, but it's more important. Just one of the things that we put, the new thing is this medium scale for the project, small, large, and medium. And you can see clearly there was a huge demand because that's the most important one. No, I'm talking about the sector-specific priorities. The sectors were highlighted in the legal basis by the Council and the Parliament. And you can see them basically: architecture, cultural heritage, music, publishing, and literature. The call remain open, obviously. Everything goes. If it is quality, we take it. I always say, if you give us a project about Latin poetry, I mean, we take it. It's not necessarily about innovation or things like that, if it is quality. So cultural heritage is always in all the calls, obviously. We have just earmarked a small envelope of about 20% of the budget, so it's not that small, which is about capacity building in these sectors, because this is the discussion that we had with the stakeholders. For instance, music, as I said, we have hundreds of projects about music. It was about time probably to give a little bit indication to the stakeholders that we think that capacity building remains probably the most important priority. Cultural heritage came up strongly. I just point out also architecture. Architecture is not necessarily something outside cultural heritage. One of the priorities exactly of this call, it was about how architecture can be used for the reuse and readaptation of heritage buildings. So we are still in the field that is quite important for us. Where are we now? So this is just the figures, but it might be interesting for you. 13 projects for cultural heritage, more than 6 million euros for them. This is the call for 21. Now we are working on selecting really the next call, 2022, which finished last week, basically. And we have a record number of applications, 682. So it will take some time, but we will get there, obviously. And obviously there will be many projects on cultural heritage. I wanted to finish also with these are the things that we normally do, cooperation project, literacy, and so on. But there are also new action that we have launched in this year. One is the implementation of the European Heritage Label. I don't know if you all know what is the European Heritage Label, but some of the sites are well known, obviously, from Athens to, but others are much less known. So we do need to provide some technical assistance for them in order to disseminate what they have, to get the best practices, to communicate also better. Because I mean, it will be difficult even for us, for the insiders, to count exactly how many of them and what do they do. So really, we need to do some work about it. Pilot project, this is something new in the sense that for the first time, the agency will implement pilot projects. This is about a cultural heritage hub, which will follow up on the work of the European Year of Cultural Heritage. So it's quite important. I said June. Well, most likely it will be a little later, in early July, because there are some bureaucratic aspects. Before we can do something in the agency, it needs to be delegated by the Commission. So it's there are some signatures that need to be put in practice, and we don't have them yet for the moment. But it will be in before the summer, let's say. And so it's quite interesting. And as I said, every year we have a new wave of cultural heritage projects. So if you miss one deadline, just wait for a few months, there will be another one. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Zampieri. I would say that the main takeaway message from your presentation would be: do not be discouraged if, but if it doesn't fit into the heritage sector, because every sector has heritage, obviously. Finally, probably the most challenging, making public-private connections for all of us. So Mr. Bruno Rossignol from the European Investment Bank, would you be so kind to offer us a vision of how we can proceed? Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to offer you a vision,
Okay.
but I'm going to be able to at least give you some indication about who we are and what we do, because I realize that I'm the last one standing between you and lunch. So I have to be quick. So can I have the...
Sure.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, thank you for inviting me today. And I'm here to present to you the EIB, which is, of course, a different animal from the ones that you may know here in Brussels. We are the Bank of the EU. We finance projects. We are the world's multilateral lender, the biggest one in the world, with 95 billion in 2021 of financing. And we only finance projects. We're a leading provider of climate finance, and we are, of course, governed by the EU member state. Now, what do we do in the field of cultural heritage? Of course, culture and urban development can be a stimulus for tourism, a driver for economic development, or a world symbol to attract investors. But when we finance cultural heritage projects, we only finance them through what we call loans. Okay, so investment loans, municipal framework loans, or regional or national program loans. Those loans can be for a single cultural building. They can be for a wider, larger cultural infrastructure, or they can be within a national framework for financing cultural investments. Projects must meet at least one of the EIB's public policy goals. And these are climate action, environmental sustainability, economic and social cohesion, innovation, infrastructure development, SMEs, and mid-cap finance. Projects have to be technically sound. All the projects that we finance are assessed by our specific department, which is called the projects department. They have to be financially viable, of course. They have to show an acceptable economic return, which is also very often difficult for a cultural heritage project. They have to comply, of course, with environmental protection and procurement regulations. And they have to comply with urban and regional planning and development strategies. Turning now to the part we specifically deal with our partners, Europa Nostra, which is the part on the 7 most endangered program, which many of you may know, or many of you may not know. The EIB Institute is the philanthropic arm of the EIB. So contrary to the EIB, we do not lend money, but we give it out. Unfortunately, we don't have that much money. And the partnership we've had since 2013 with Europa Nostra, leading heritage NGO for the annual 7 most endangered program, is an interesting program in the way that it mixes our cultural, our technical expertise and the expertise of Europa Nostra. What is the 7 most endangered program? Every year, we, Europa Nostra, selects 7 most endangered sites, and EIB experts carry out pro bono on-site missions and produce technical reports on the feasibility and funding options to safeguard the site. The current 7 most endangered 2022 list has been announced recently, and the call for the 2023 will be in the fall, I think it's September. Our additional work that we have with Europa Nostra is the report or the book that we produced last year with the European Cultural Heritage Green Paper, which was launched in March 2021. And the idea was to illustrate how cultural heritage could be the missing link between the EU Green Deal and the EU citizens, because 80% of EU citizens think that cultural heritage is important for them. But how to relate cultural heritage and the EU Green Deal? Well, cultural heritage can be the missing link between the two. Using cultural heritage to promote the EU Green Deal could be a way to reconcile citizens with the EU and the EU Green Deal. With that, I will be happy to take any question you may have.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I will use this opportunity since you invited me personally, I think. I wanted to ask you actually how, when you decide to invest in such a project, do you consider the heritage manager's capacity to run the project? So what are the criteria, not only, I suppose, linked to finances and endangeredness of the project, but are they capable of running the project properly?
Are we talking about the 7 most
Yes,
endangered? Okay,
yes.
we're talking about 7 most endangered. This is something that is assessed by Europa Nostra to begin with, and then it is assessed by us in the missions that we're conducting on site. Since last year, every 7 most endangered site is eligible for 10,000 euros grant from the EIB Institute, but this grant has to be specifically assigned for a specific task. It can be a communication plan, it can be anything that relates to the project itself. The capacity of the cultural heritage manager has to be, of course, has a role to play in how this money will be used, in how this money will be dedicated for saving or preserving the site. So yes, this does play a role in how we assess the project and how specifically we assign the grant.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, because within all of these projects, I think we detected this bottleneck, I would say, because we invest in heritage, but then if we are not capable enough to run it properly, then we have to invest again. So I suppose you have to take care about it. So I am opening the floor for just a few questions. Thank you very much to all of the speakers. So the questions may be addressed to any of the speakers, even from the previous session or this one. I think we have heard a lot of opportunities and you really inspired us for this programming period. So anyone in the room or online? Koen, was it you? No? Sorry. Oh, to bring the, yeah, okay, great.
Okay, so
Yes.
thank you very much. Just to break the ice, I think it's always making things easy, and maybe online people will follow up as well. As you know, also coming from an academic environment, so we are very often making proposals for Horizon projects and others in different fields. And then you end up by, I don't know, what is the success rate for Horizon projects? And I'm just wondering how we deal with this huge amount of knowledge and things which are created and never used. Because I think the success rate is, I don't know, 20% or something like that. And so that's something we have to sometimes think about. What is are the mechanisms in which we can also make sure that the enthusiasm for people is kept alive, because I see a lot of frustration, and I think I'm not the only one. So I don't know if you have some considerations at your site.
Well, thanks for this question, which is indeed very important as a reflection. I have 2 thoughts. Well, on one side, in terms of mechanisms, there is at least something, an existing mechanism called the Seal of Excellence. You've heard of that. That is, at least in some cases, a sort of exit strategy or alternative option for those projects that have not reached the threshold for being selected, but they, thanks to let's say, the evaluation that they have reached. Anyway, they get this seal of excellence, and they can be funded under, for example, other possibilities, opportunities. The cohesion policy itself uses this reflection to look at the possibility that a project receive this seal of excellence means that is already valuable and can overtake the first part of the difficulty of an evaluation for another candidature. So that makes it easier to be, let's say, resettled or reproposed in another context. So it is already something, I would say. On the other side, I would also add, but this is of course just a personal opinion, that it is not necessarily a waste of resources, of energies, because the capacity that writing a proposal mobilizes and the number of contacts and assets that come together with the submission of the proposal are a heritage in itself, because even if the project doesn't reach the threshold, doesn't get the funding, it has mobilized a number of forces, and it has created a capacity building and resources that stay for the institutions and the university or stakeholders that have tried to apply. So I think in particular in terms of setting up a consortium and a partnership, it's something that becomes a legacy and that can always be reused. Speaking of reuse, in an adaptive way. Of course, this is just a partial and personal view, but it's a complementary possible way of interpreting the work on trying to work on European projects without being discouraged.
Thank you very much. We often talk about impact assessment and evaluation, actually. It's a type of evaluation, if I understood well. It was on this track, your question. So we talk about it in the sector of heritage, right? But we also have to do it on the program level and to see if our projects, which contributed to some knowledge, have something we can learn on and build upon it. So I totally agree with your view. I understand we have an online question. So
yes,
Susanna,
we
you
have
can
an
read
online
it.
question from Lena Kiropoulos, if she wants to connect.
Yes, good morning from Greece. I would like also to say that I'm feeling very honored to be here with you. I have a general question, and this is a query because I belong also to a very eminent cultural association recognized from the two culture ministerials and foreign affairs ministry as well. Excuse me, my German and my English are a little bit complicated, but I will give my effort. So I would like to ask if somebody has already a nice scheme, a nice network, and a nice, let's say, very strong channeling in several countries, how it comes that his proposal is rejected? What are the criteria? From the first moment when we were participants in Creative Europe, I would like just to have your, let's say, your honest answer, because I want to understand how this kind of mechanisms is working out. From the first moment, I think we were, some people, they really love and they are very devoted to what we say civilization, culture exchange, because like Greeks, you know, we love history. It is in our genes, but we like to interact. And I want to understand what are the criteria that someone is going to be selected. And I want to have your answers from the more specific and appropriate person here in also an Interreg program in Central Europe and also in Europe as well. Thank you.
She first
Okay,
mentioned
maybe I
Creative
reply for
Europe.
Creative
Yeah,
Europe.
for Creative Europe.
Yeah,
Yes.
I reply for Creative Europe and then for Interreg, we'll see. Well, first of all, you need to remember that in Creative Europe, as I said, we cover all the sectors, which means that there is a library in Estonia and we're comparing it with, I don't know, a ballet in Spain. So it's not hard science. I mean, we do have obviously experts that help us, and we look at the objective criteria that goes from quality, relevance, dissemination, what kind of plan they have, how is the management, the governance of the project, and so on. And this is quite objective, as I said, and you have to consider that there's a huge competition. Unfortunately, I mean that's where we are. It's not that difficult from Creative Europe that we have in the research programs that you mentioned before. It's about 20%, and it really is the application, because at the end of the day, in order to make sure that we have a fair, equal treatment of all the applicants, okay, everything has to be in the application. Even though I know, for instance, that a specific organization is extremely good, if they don't put a very complete and very precise, and they explain everything in the application, we cannot use the knowledge that we have outside the application in terms of equal treatment. So really, I suppose you need to spend a lot of time when you prepare your application, because every mistake, you pay for that, unfortunately.
Excuse me, may I also say something last, and then thank you for the time. First of all, we were a very great team. You know, Delphi, the region of Delphi in Greece, is a brand name for history and for humanity. We had Harvard University with us, and we had Isidora Duncan Institute. Mm-hmm. So these three components alone, let's say it's a culture promoter. So I cannot understand how our proposal was rejected. And I wanted to figure out the criteria about it, because it's not something that is unknown. It's not something that is just started just now. It's something that really started many years ago, decades ago. And I want to figure out why.
But if you have been rejected by Creative Europe, and I suppose that's the point, you should have also received an explanation exactly with all the points and what were found deficient, let's say, and then there is a redress procedure. I mean, I can only tell you that in the same letter that you received the notification, there was also information about how to complain, basically.
Yeah. Thank you, Elena. The fact that something is a branded region or a heritage asset is a very good thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the criteria set by the programs were met. So it is difficult. It can be frustrating, I believe, but it's for all of us in the heritage sector that we have to recapacitate ourselves in that matter. So I believe pretty much the same criteria are in Interreg Central Europe and Interreg Europe. So it's always the same, and which leads us, if you allow me, to close the session and to give some conclusions from what we have learned today. It leads us to the need for strategic planning, for new knowledge that we have to build in the heritage sector, not only to get the money, to put it simply, but to really run the projects in a very modern and contemporary way, because heritage is not static. It's not something in the past. We inherited it from our ancestors, but we have to think about new tools, I would say. We talked about new financing schemes, which are not really inherent to the heritage sector. We learn it from business or other sectors. We learn from creative industries. So creative industries are a very dynamic sector, and they can really revive the heritage sector. We talked about hybrid possibilities today, alternative funding. It's not obviously only about funding. Hannah mentioned also a blessing and a curse, working with the different foundations, different private sector stakeholders, and civil society. So we have to include all of those sectors and all of those stakeholders and learn how to work with them. Somebody, or practically all of us today, talked about how difficult it is, because when you work with people who have tons of different ideas, it can be really frustrating. Sometimes I have to say from the practice, the ideas are very stupid, but this is why we have to sit together and work together in order to see that it's not only the decision made by a mayor or a heritage manager or whoever, the president, whoever, but we have different visions, and then we kind of try to mitigate our interests. So normally people from the private sector want to earn money. So it's sometimes very difficult to educate them that heritage also has values, which Koen talked about, right? So values are different, not necessarily in line with economic or financial interests. So as I mentioned several times today, we need new knowledge, new professions to be developed in cultural heritage, and also transferring this knowledge to also the private sector. Civil society is also extremely important in this process, as well as bottom-up approach. What we talked about today is the possibility of replication and transferable elements of these projects. There is tons of projects which we've seen today, or which were presented within the platform, so good practices. But we have to be aware that good practices function in a certain context. Of course, several examples or several lines in each of these projects can be transferred, but not always. So as Damian said, how did you say it? Not every example fits all, right? Something like that. We also mentioned limited capacities of heritage institutions sometimes. We have to be honest. We're not perfect always, right? So we have to invest in ourselves. What else? It was difficult to put all the notes here. Holistic approach. We talked about integrated approach. This is what we have to understand. It's not only about integrating vertically from the local level, regional level, national level, which we often fail to do, but also with other sectors, so horizontally. Heritage is not alone. Heritage is also about urban planning. It's about education. It's about industry. It's about tourism. It's about everything. So it is difficult for people working bottom-up projects to reach the policymakers to say that this integrated approach should be a part of the policy making, but this is the only way. We are not promising here like a beautiful future or something. It is a difficult process, but it's a process we have to work on. Finally, Koen, I have to cite you again, what you said about focusing on the commons. So we are not only for profits here, we are here for the benefits, because it is true that heritage has its instrumental values, which means connecting it to tourism, industry, management, different types of sectors where heritage can contribute to, but we should think about heritage itself. It's not only a resource for development, but we have it for its inherent values and its because it is what we have. It's the beauty of the heritage, right? In the new perspective, definitely we'll have to stop thinking about the heritage as the focus of everything. Heritage is a part of the Green Deal. Heritage is a part of education. Heritage is a part of connectedness. It's a part of digitization. Of course, digital tools can be used not only to preserve heritage, but also for marketing, also for different types of safeguarding of heritage, I would also say, from looting, for example. We have wars, but if we don't have the digital recordings of this, the heritage is gone. So we just have to be creative and change the perspective in terms to meet the criteria set in the new programming period. Well, finally, Christiana is smiling, and we should be smiling. So heritage is something we inherited from the past, and we should cherish this, but we should also use it for the bright future. Thank you very much. I hope you liked it. I would like to thank Finpio Monte again for organizing this, to all of the EU representatives who came in our partnering project. I hope to make connections here today with you to use this knowledge, as you said, what we gathered, to build upon it and make it successful in the new programming period for successful projects. Thanks to the technicians, digitization is always a challenge. Thanks to all of you who followed us online. We are so grateful and happy to see such a high interest. And all of you, we invite you for a bright lunch. Online, you'll have to prepare it yourself. So, bye, everyone.